Welcome to the Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show we have a talk about something in tech. Could be a Linux distribution, it could be a desktop environment, some applications, maybe just some news, some topics, or what people are just thinking about in tech. So anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. With me today, I got Dan Kelly, Sravan. He doesn't need a last name because he's the only Sravan in the world, I think. Eris, Jinda, Mark, and Schykle. Thank you so much for being here. Colin can't be here this weekend, so he's resting. He's getting prepared to wrestle kangaroos or something like that, so he can't be here, and he's got to get his strength. So he will. We will miss him this week. So hopefully he'll be ready for whatever comes up next, and he'll be here next week. So on the docket for today, we got our news flight. We're going to check what's on the menu for next week. We'll do a community free pour, a last call. But first, what have you been doing in Linux or tech? Schykle.
So I recently, despite having been all aboard the Mac train for a while, I got a Surface Laptop 4, and it's an AMD model. And I am currently in the process of trying to get Fedora Silverblue to run super excellent on it. I've had Surface devices in the past. I had the first gen Surface Laptop and Surface Laptop Go. This one is actually the only one that I've actually had trouble with getting working. So this is an adventure for me because I need to essentially be able to load certain hardware drivers for the keyboard before most of the kernel gets loaded, to be able to decrypt the drive to load all the things that I need to load. And the problem is that with Silverblue, because it's an immutable file system, I have to do some really weird hacky stuff to get it to work that I could otherwise just work in Fedora. So I did this to myself, but I'm excited.
Well, I think it sounds like a great project. I mean, assuming you don't like somehow brick your Surface Pro, but I can't imagine.
I'll find a way.
Yeah. Are you going to run GNOME on it? Because GNOME seems to have a really nice touch interface at this point.
Yeah, that's the goal. The one thing that I have sort of struggled with is that this has a very strange resolution. So on Windows, the resolution for this particular display and size is really, really great. And it scales at exactly 150%. Doing that on GNOME, I only see 100% and 200% options, and 200% is a lot of 100% more than I need. So, I got to figure that out now as well. Maybe I'll just run it at a lower resolution, but yeah, it's been an adventure so far.
That's cool. Do you have it with you, or are you using it right now, or what's it doing right now?
I am.
Oh yeah!
Wow, shiny new. Smell it.
It actually smells really good. I will
admit, I can smell it from here.
I have smelled it.
The smell of a new laptop is really good.
I got new electronics this week too. I had to smell it a lot.
That's the way to do it.
But I don't think my Raspberry Pi smells that good, or my Odroid, but I'll get a Pine Book in a few weeks, so maybe that will smell.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
Well.
Those do smell decent, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but last time I got a laptop was 5 years ago when I got my HP Spectre. That smells well, but I haven't had an experience in a long while.
I have to say that when it comes to smell, there's a smell of technology when it comes out of the box.
Yep.
I realize it's the plastic outgassing and the different toxic chemicals breaking down, in the package. I get it. I totally understand it. But it is such a delightful smell. And even it brings happiness to me when I smell that.
Nate, it's the overall experience, is the smell, the touch of unblemished, pristine Surface, not Surface laptop, but electronic surfaces with matte finishes, a lot of things. Right. You guys know what I'm saying. Sure. We all are nerds here.
I really want to experience.
Smell is just music for your nose.
It is. It's true. it ties everything together. I think that's why they say the sense of smell is one of the strongest. I watch a lot of vintage tech YouTubers, and I think it was LGR. He had new in box something from 1980s, and he said it smelled like the 80s. I'm like, what does that smell like? I know I experienced it, but I don't know what the 80s smells like. I mean, wood paneling and cigarette butts. I mean, I don't know. That's awesome. So Schykle, I hope that you keep us updated on this, and I'm really excited to see what you do with it. Whatever your experimentation is, I hope you can take pictures and put it in the Telegram or wherever you like to share it. But that's really awesome that you got that. So Sravan, you've had some adventures here in some file permission. Is it troubles or is it file permission successes? That's all I know. File permissions.
So yeah, let me give you a little bit of background. So again, a friend of mine, like online friend, he's been playing with LXQT themes and some LXQT wing panels. So I was like, let me try some of these. So I already have a KDE install on my Odroid. So I was like, should I installed LXQt. I was thinking whether should I create a new user for the new desktop or whether I should retain the old user, but common sense prevailed. I created a new user for LXQt, but now I need a way for files to be common between the two users. So I did this before, but not in an elegant way. So I was trying to figure out elegant ways to have like a common folder, like under the main root, it's like /data. I created a common folder. It seems they're like GUID permissions, which has, so normal permissions are like 644.755, right? But in these cases, you have to add a 2 in front of 755. So it's something like 2755, something like that. So this is, it sets, I still don't understand it properly. It's like setting the group permissions or whatever. Like it executes as a group. So it's called set GUID. So normally the permissions in octals are 3 digits. 4 is for write. 4 is for read, 2 is for write, 1 is for execute. So that's where you get 7. 7 means the user has all 3 permissions. Write, read, write, execute. So normal folder permissions in our Linux directory structures are 755. So the user has everything. The group has write and execute. Sorry, read and execute, and the others have read and execute. It's user, group, and others. So I've been trying to play around with permissions and set permissions recursively using, you guys know the fd command, right? So using fd command to find directories, and then fd command has a batch execute option called -X. So you can set fd type f files, and then a -X. You can set chmod 2755, something like that. So you can just find all the files and directories in the common folder. And I also created a systemd service for that with like 10-minute timers. So again, anytime I create new files or everything, like all the file permissions will be consistent. It's been fun. It's been since today morning. I've been still playing around with it. This is not the final form. I'm still not happy with my solution.
So the reason for this problem solving trail that you're on, was there like a something that caused you to want to look for a solution for the file permissions? Is there some reason that you what fired you down this path?
Again, the main thing is we want to have multiple desktop environments in a single install.
Okay.
So the best way to do that is not to have a single user and multiple desktop environments. Your config folder will be screwed. Like you should not do that. Like it doesn't work. Like there are several things which goes on. So it never works out well when you have one user and, like, for example, you install KDE, you install GNOME, you have a single user to log in both. It never works out well. Your home folder will get screwed. So the best way to do it is to create a new user. And when you're logging into the other desktop environment, you have to always use a second user. You should never use a first user. So the best way to have multiple DEs in a single install is to have one user per DE and to only use that user for that particular DE.
Okay.
So now you have separate home folders for each user, right? They're not shared. But if you want common downloads folder, common documents folder, or other folders you want to share between different users, So you need like proper file permissions to write so that every user can write and other things. So you have to create like shared group and add the users to the shared group and then change the group ownership, the folder group ownership, and also give it correct permissions.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. I've been running, I don't know if you know this, but I've been running openSUSE for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's news to everybody. About, what year is it? About 12 years or so. Yeah, 12 years, 11 years full time.
We need an openSUSE guy in the gang.
Yeah, we need one. One's good.
At least one.
Yeah. Gotta see what they're like.
Two would be better.
Well, Schykle's kind of like semi-openSUSE-ish. He runs on a server. I actually run multiple desktops, but I run like Xfce, Plasma, and I keep a GNOME instance on a machine. I don't have any issues with like between them, so I don't know if maybe openSUSE did something.
So do you have the same user for all of these?
I do.
Okay.
The only issue that I have is if, like, let's say I install Pantheon desktop, if I make changes in GNOME on the theming, it does seem to affect Pantheon, but nothing. And then also, Plasma can affect the theming.
Plasma affects LSQ. That's why I don't want to.
But
so it's.
But so actually, but what it changes, I'm fine with. So maybe it's just a preference thing for me, but it doesn't interfere. It doesn't cause like glitching. It just causes maybe uniformity between the desktop environments.
In general, what I've seen, like again today in a forum, someone installed KDE and GNOME side by side. He was having so many issues, and someone suggested just create a new user, log into GNOME, see if the issues exist. It's like no issues. It's like if we have multiple desktop environments, generally people in our endeavors community have seen that is that it's not a good idea to have multiple. But you can have a desktop environment and a window manager. So for example, you can have Xfce and i3 together because the config files are different. Right. They never mix up.
Now,
so it's that way.
What I did do was, so I was trying to, this is years ago, and I wrote an article on it even. So before I figured out about GNOME tweaks, I couldn't figure out how to change things in GNOME. I was getting really frustrated. And so I just went into Plasma to fix GNOME because I couldn't change the things I wanted. And that's actually how I configured GNOME to make it look the way I wanted. So then someone said, well, have you tried GNOME tweaks? I'm like, well, what's GNOME tweaks? I said, well, allows you to do all the things you're trying to do, but with Plasma. I'm like, well, why isn't that installed by default? And anyway, then that sent me down a whole other thing. But anyway, because they don't want you to say I have it by default.
I have another question. Like I know many people here multi-boot or distro hop or whatever. Like how do you if you have a multi-boot, if you have a common home folder between different desktop environments, if you have different distros, like how do you manage the config files and again how do you transfer files between? How do you have common data between two different?
I use
distros?
Dropbox.
Oh, okay.
I use Dropbox, and but it's a great cloud service, but you have to. A lot of people don't like the security around that, right?
So,
but you could,
if you
want to run your own too, you could use Nextcloud.
Can't you change a given folder to everybody permissions like Wheeler or something like that? And it'll go cross-platform between users.
You typically want to avoid that when possible. Yes. If you have an account like with the same user, you're fine, but you don't want to just make it completely permissive unless you absolutely have to. And also what I would recommend doing is just having a partition that contains the specific data you need without having it be your entire home folder. So if you create a partition and that contains your documents folder, your downloads folder, this, and that, but doesn't contain .config, doesn't contain this and that. Yep. When you set up a new desktop, exactly, just symlink it to that so you avoid any config issues.
But again, the issue is what permission should I give? So I did that. So right now, I told you, right, all the things.
Just the default permissions for that user, because it should be the same no matter what distribution you're using, as long as the username is the exact same.
I get it. You're saying so the username has to be exact. Yeah, then you're fair. You're correct.
Well, very cool. Well, I like that the approach of what you're doing to like roll a solution that works for you, Sravan. And it's neat that you're going down that trail. And I'm sure there are many applications where you'd want to do as you're doing it to like isolate all the config files between different user experiences, different desktop environments. That's pretty cool.
And also I have one more tool. It's called chmod-calculator.com. If you guys are confused with permissions, just go here. It's very, very easy to use. You can get whatever octal permissions you want. No need to remember.
That's cool. Awesome. So I see, Mark, you have some multi-OS keyboard woes. Is this?
Yeah, I've started. My employer issued me a MacBook Pro. It's a great laptop, and it is probably the best hardware for a traveling consultant. The battery lasts the longest. It has the best power sleeping and coming back from type of thing. It's excellent equipment. I got to tell you, I hate the keyboard. I hate the trackpads, all that type of stuff. And why did Apple have to be, change, cut, copy, paste? And I may have mentioned this last week, but oh my gosh, I've had so much trouble. So Schykle, I did what you said, and I previously had in my MacBook, I had overridden the cut, copy, paste with Control-C, Control-X, Control. Well, you know what? I removed those and went back to the defaults and said, look, Mark needs to learn how to just deal with the Apple, the way the Apple works, right? So I've been doing that. But now I switch back over to my Linux computer or my Windows computer, and I'm hitting the damn super copy, cut, paste. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just too much.
It's hard to maintain that because there's no consistency between them. It's definitely difficult to switch back and forth.
And I do use Windows and I do use Linux and Mac all day long, and the Mac trying to set, first of all, I'm a creature of habit, right? And those habits are not gonna, they're not gonna come to me easily. And then all of a sudden I'm mistyping when I get back under Windows. And and I actually told my manager, I said, look, this is part of why Mark's not as efficient on a MacBook. And then in the Mac, depending upon the app you're using, sometimes the super cut, copy, paste doesn't even work. You have to end up right-clicking and copying and right-clicking and pasting. And I'm like, well, that is a lot more effort too. The other thing I wanted to mention, and the reason I just wanted to bring this up was, so at work, a lot of people had bought this style Logitech keyboard. And this, if you ask the corporate help desk to send you a keyboard, they send this type, and it is very flat, right, y'all? And this is the kind of the preferred third-party keyboard for Mac, right? And again, this is a great keyboard. The problem is it's just too flat. And again, you got on this side of the space bar, there's 4 keys, and I'm just not used to that at all.
That is a pancake.
It's horrible. And then I do love that it has a number pad, right? I got it. I've always liked having my 101 keyboards with the number pad. But yeah, it is really a pancake, and the keys just don't function or whatever. Well, I put this aside during the week, and I'm going with my traditional just wireless Logitech. I have the very same keyboard on my Windows box. This is my Linux box thing, and this just feels so much better. And so and on the Mac I am using the super key for the cut, copy, paste. But I just wanted to talk about my woes for a moment, and it is better with what I'm used to.
I was just gonna ask, how are you getting along with the sort of lack of a delete button? Have you noticed that yet?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, you're right. There is a lack of a delete. And see now, and that is where this keyboard actually had the delete and the back.
Ah, yeah.
So that really helps Mac people. But oh, the other thing is KeyPass XC. KeyPass XC has got now where you can do the biometrics, right? Or, well, I've sort of got a little bit of a docking station with my MacBook. And the problem, if you set up biometrics, well, then, and you close the Mac to not, to just use it on the big screen, you got to open the Mac to use the biometrics. So, this is one of those things too, that during the day, I either have to use their, what do they call that strip at the top, the application strip or whatever. During the day, sometimes I have to get off the keyboard and go to this top strip so that I can either hit mute or something else. I'm like, why you got to be so different?
Because they've always said think different.
Yeah,
Remember, even in the
different.
80s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it is different.
Now, I got hung up on something you said, and I think I didn't fully latch on. So Mac has a different combination for copy paste than the rest of the computer world?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You have to use the Apple super key. I'll bring it over.
The command, I believe.
Key.
Command key.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
So
there
you
is
have to
no cut button either for like the file manager.
There's a function and there's a control, but if you use control C, X and V, and also the undo, right? And also the select all, control A doesn't work on this crazy thing. Control Z doesn't work. You have to use command, and then that is a different finger when you try to go do these things. And I got fat fingers, right? And so, oh my gosh, it's and then there's an option key. And honestly, I don't even know what the option key's for.
I know what
options.
it's for.
Well, I mean, but like I don't have them memorized, but go ahead, help me, Schykle.
I'll give you two really cool things that the option key does. Whenever you're presented with a dialog or let's say a menu, if you hold the option key, it will present alternative options. So like if you're copying and pasting a bunch of files in the file manager and there's file conflicts, your three options are to skip, replace, or cancel. But if you press the option key, the skip button or the replace button will change to a button that says keep both. And it will rename the new files with numbers after them instead of replacing or skipping them. Another thing that the option key does is allow for secondary controls. So when you want to delete a file, when there's no delete button, you'd actually press Command Option Delete, and it would permanently delete instead of sending it to trash. It also does cool things.
Control Shift Delete, which is on Windows.
Exactly. And the other thing it does, which is if you copy a file in the file manager, there's no like cut option. If you press Command Option V, it will move the file into where you're going instead of pasting it. It's a system. It's something.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
So anyways, I don't know what all these. I don't know how these people in Cupertino work. I just.
This is not a straightforward process. That's for sure. I've figured that out. It's not sensible.
Yeah.
The whole holding down a button to get in like a different menu or button, that reminds me how GNOME used to be. I think it didn't have a shutdown button. You could only like go to standby, and then you would have to hold on to Alt or something, and then press the button or something, and then it will show you the shutdown button, right? Is that what it was?
I'm stuck on you don't have copy or cut, or you don't have cut in the file manager, so you can't.
Yeah, no, it's not a thing.
So you can't move files.
So it's done as a secondary, like, so rather than the cut being your first action, the move is actually your second action. So no matter what, like when you're moving files from one place to another, it's a copy. So what their logic behind it is that you can't cut files without taking them out in the first place. So the only time the move actually happens is when you're pasting, which is why it's Command Option V instead of cutting from the very beginning. Whether or not that's the best way to do it, I don't know. Like, there's logic behind it. No one else does that at all for any reason whatsoever. So I just
and this Logitech keyboard is made to work on any operating system. So I have no idea what this alternate option button would do under Linux. It'd probably just send your data straight to China or something. I have no idea.
Could you try it during the stream?
No, I'm not going to use. Oh no.
Well, on another machine, like just see if you got another machine you can play around.
Yeah,
and
I probably could.
Yeah, just we'll do it for science.
Yeah, for science.
That's awesome.
Anyways, yeah. So those were my woes, but for the people on the recording, I'll tell you, again, many times you do have to interoperate with multiple OSs. So, it'd be interesting to know what my things are go back to basics. So find the most basic keyboard that works rather than these fancy new ones. I don't know. It'd be interesting if there's other ideas.
With the more bells and whistles you have, I think the more things that can go wrong.
Have you seen that keyboard that I think IBM or I remember Lenovo made? That's just like the laptops, and it has like all the keyboard buttons. It's it's like a ThinkPad keyboard. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that. Yep.
That seems like something certain people would buy because it does cost a lot. I think it costs like around $100 or something like that.
Oh wow.
And I know Mac makes a keyboard, and everyone likes, a lot of Mac people who try to stay on the Mac all day long, they'll get those really thin keyboards, and again, they'll get maybe a trackpad that sits on their desk. But I'm so hard for me to use those things. Again, they are flat as flat can be.
Might be a carpal tunnel risk.
Yeah. But
well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your keyboard woes. I am interested in knowing though what that option key does on a Linux system, like what it reports itself as. That'd be interesting to know. Like maybe it's just like an F13 or F14 or something like that. I wonder.
Yeah.
Because I have an old Mac keyboard that's got an F13 on it, so it goes F12 and then F13. I thought that's interesting. All right. So I'll share something shortly. I finally have a 10 kilowatt solar electric array at my place. It's quite large, and there's a big trench that goes between the solar array and the house. It also came with a backup battery load, so I have giant lithium iron phosphate cabinet housing thing. It's only 2/3 full of batteries, and that is it's pretty exciting. So like when power goes out, I still have backup generator basically, but on battery, and I'm also producing quite a bit of electricity throughout the day, which is good.
How big is it?
How big
is it? Do you have pictures?
I have pictures, and I can share those. It's hard to share right now, but it's a pretty large thing, and I was just checking out a little bit. Like I was just out there because I'd been gone, and it just was put in on Wednesday. So everything's it's not fully inspected, so it's not like fully operational. They have to do some other things. So like some agency has to inspect it, say it's good to go, and then I can start putting power on the grid. So right now it just offsets my power usage. It doesn't actually put on the grid at this point. So I'm pretty excited. It should reduce my electric costs substantially. And so I guess I've just shifted my bill, but it's pretty great actually. They're 28 325 watt panels or something like that. I might have the number wrong, but anyway, it comes out to about 10 kilowatt is the max amount of power it'll produce. So I'm doing my part to reduce my electric burden on everybody else. Anyway.
Now, is that to your house, to the shop, yes. To all of it, or to all of
it? Just to the house, because that's where I plug in my EV hybrid electric plug-in. So I have one of those. So instead of spending money on petrol, I spend money on electricity. And this hopefully will reduce my financial burden then when I drive around. I mean, yes, it is. Now I have a loan, but I was going to spend money on electricity anyway, so I'm just spending on it in a different way, I guess. But anyway, very excited. What?
Supposedly, natural gas prices are supposed to spike in the
40%.
winter this year.
Yeah, I was told 40% by the gas company.
Yeah, so this is a good thing looking ahead, I guess.
Maybe I should get a wood burning stove. I just don't know where I'd put it. And I don't have to chop wood. But I have lots of wood right now because I had to knock down a tree to put this up. And it took me weeks to remove all the wood. So
wood's an awful lot of work and a big commitment.
It is. But I could put it in the basement and then pipe it into the the heat exchange system.
Did you install it in the ground, or did you do it on top of a roof or anything? Or?
Yeah, it's a ground mount.
Ground mount, okay.
Yeah, and it's about 300 feet-ish away from the house itself. So it goes actually past me here, the trench. But it's the only place we could put it where it didn't where I actually got sunlight all day long. There weren't trees in the way. Yeah, so I guess we'll find out how it all, if it does as well. I have a kind of a cool little app that shows me how much power it's producing and graphs, and I really like numbers and graphs. Like I like seeing these things. I can see where the power is going and so forth. And also at night, so my battery backup system, which will help offset some of the costs, it will essentially discharge at night to power the house. So that then reduces how much power I use at night as well. It's pretty cool. I can see right now I'm using 4 kilowatt on my house. Seems like a lot. Anyway, so do you have any questions on that? Like how much it cost me? I don't talk about how much it cost me because that hurts a little bit.
I bet it does.
It's a commitment. It means I'm stuck here for a while. I'm not moving. All right, so today is our news flight night. So we're going to muddle our way through the Linux news. As always, a big thanks to Michael of This Week in Linux for mixing up a great flight of topics. And the story I want to start off with is on Matt Hicks becomes the CEO of Red Hat. Now, I know that Schykle used Fedora. I don't know if anybody else here uses Fedora. But Fedora is very very closely tied with Red Hat. So it was announced that this week that the current CEO, Paul Cormier, will be stepping out of the CEO position and to become chairman of the board. And Paul became a Red Hatter in 2001 and has been the CEO and president of Red Hat since early 2020, and was handling the reign during the very difficult time due to starting the CEO position during the early stages of the Rona. Paul played a pivotal role in Red Hat becoming what is today, as he led the company to transition to focusing on Red Hat Enterprise Linux in 2003 as Red Hat's VP of Engineering. This move resulted in Red Hat becoming the industry-leading enterprise Linux platform. While this move is controversial, it does seem to have paid off for Red Hat. The new CEO, Matt Hicks, joined Red Hat in 2006, and prior to becoming the CEO, his position was the company's head of products and technologies. He said in the note to the Red Hat employee that he'd never imagined that my career would lead me to this moment. If I only followed my initial path, not raised my hand for certain projects, or shied away from contributing ideas and asking questions, I might not be here. That is what I love about Red Hat. It is something that differentiates us from other companies. Nothing is predetermined. We are only limited by our position and drive to contribute and make an impact. Making impact is for sure, especially through his work with Red Hat OpenShift, helping Red Hat become a hybrid cloud technology leader. Hicks, now in charge, said in a statement, "When I first joined Red Hat, I was passionate about open source and our mission, and I wanted to be part of that. I'm humbled and energized to be stepping into this role at this moment. There has never been more exciting time to be part in our industry, and the opportunity in front of Red Hat is vast. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and prove that open source technology truly can unlock the world's potential." So I have some links if you're interested in more information, right from Red Hat itself. But that's an interesting comment that he made about the contributions of making an impact to the open source in general. For you who play in the open source, do you ever think about what your contributions, either big or small, how they may impact other people? And is it something that maybe you ever think about?
From the Peppermint side that I do some work for, They pointed in their forums to a news article where this guy is using peppermint down in another country, like in Africa somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they're plagued with old computers, and they only last so long, and they break, and they try to keep them running. What they've done for the students in the school is actually taken peppermint and installed it off one USB onto other USBs and gave the other USBs with the full install of peppermint on them to the students, so they have the operating system, the software, all their homework, and everything is on one USB.
That's really cool. Do you know what kind of computers they're using?
Whatever they can get. They're from what I understand, they're like 10-year-old machines.
That's very cool. I think it's neat.
This allows them to actually take the USB and put it in any of them machines. You know, a student could have a different machine every day. If one dies and falls out of service, they just bring another one in that works. But the student's always got his operating system and all his software and homework with them.
It's like a persistent USB. Everything's on the USB.
They've made a persistent USB.
Oh, that's cool.
Out of peppermint to do that task.
So do you think about, Dan, since you are a big contributor to Peppermint now, do you ever think about how your contributions impact people you'll never see and they will never meet you?
A little bit, yeah. I kind of figure sometimes I'm the last stop of protection for something getting out that's not right, because I will download a nightly build. I will install it in one of my 5 laptops I get lying around here. If it fails somewhere in the installer, something's not right, I'll get back on Element back to the Peppermint guys and I'll take a picture of what it shows on the screen. If there's a message or something that doesn't look right, anything I can to help them guys, and they immediately fix it. And that's part of my job, is to make sure from beginning to end it installs, runs, does multimedia and all the other things that Peppermint's supposed to do. I'm glad to be part of that community and help them out.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, the Titan Linux guys, I've been trying to give them some help now and then. I have a more direct connection to them, where I can get a hold of them on Discord and talk to them face to face through the microphone. But that's their project. I'm not solely part of their project. I'm just giving them some pointers. Peppermint was first and will still always be.
Right, for sure. Now, Sravan, I don't know if you're there right now, but you're doing all this work with Endeavor OS and ARM. Is that still your focus?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you ever think about the contributions you're making to that project, how they affect people that you don't even know, like what your impact is? Or do you not really?
Too much.
No.
Because I don't think, like, it's the thing I do is for hobbies. It's like the Raspberry Pi single board computers. They're not mainstream. They're mainly for hobbies. So yeah, I never think of it that way. It's like turning more people into hobbyists is my goal.
That's cool.
It's not that serious.
Yeah, I think it's something that's very cool about being in the open source community. Whatever amount of involvement you have, even if it's just helping somebody, on the Telegram or Discord, Matrix, in a forum, whatever, how you can have a real positive impact for somebody else that you may never talk to ever again. But that.
I think what you said is correct. I think my impact is more on the forums, where I help new users with issues. It's like, okay, even though I don't know everything, but the things I know, I've seen the issues, I can help them. Okay, do this and this, and read this for the future issues. So they have the solution, but they also have resources to refer to. Like, we are not spoon feeding user solutions, but we are teaching them how to solve the problems yourself. So again, they'll become experienced Linux users in a few months, and then hopefully they'll start the cycle of contributing and helping other users.
Yeah, I think just having to think about, how in Red Hat, a guy went from being, a dude that just contributed, had suggestions and contribute and helped to make open source better, and now he's a CEO. So it's kind of exciting to see the good things happen to people like that. I really enjoy good news stories like that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
I'm too old to get into CEOville.
Oh, sure.
Besides, the peppermint team is like scattered around the globe a little bit. There's a guy from Japan. There's some that live here. I think there's a guy that may live in the UK. So it's not like they're all in one office building it.
Right. It's a virtual project.
Yeah.
Now,
our team is small, but we are, I think, in 3 continents.
now, Dan, I have some exciting news for you, and maybe others. But did you know that there is Wayland support coming to Xfce desktop?
I did not know that.
So yesterday, we found out that there's currently work to port Xfce's window manager, XFWM4, to support Wayland. The new Xfce compositor is being developed using the WL Roots library that first came out from the Sway project, which was intended to make it possible to use i3 workflow on Wayland. So it's very cool to hear that Xfce, who has had the reputation of not getting a lot of development time, is working on support for Wayland, because it was up in the air as to whether or not that would be happening for this classic desktop environment.
Does it say anything about Wayland support for NVIDIA? That's a big bucket to fill for a lot of us.
It did not, but I'm sure that's going to be everybody's problem. I'm quite sure.
Yeah.
Who here uses Xfce like on the regular? I know like Anna Rita, I think she uses Xfce. So Jinda uses Xfce. Eris. So is that something that you care about, having Wayland on Xfce?
For me, not so much, because it's not on my gaming rig. It's on my secondary multimedia rig.
Eris, is it something that interests you? Do you care about Wayland?
I think it's important for there to be development. I'm not I mean, I don't use Wayland usually, but I mean, it's gonna inevitably gonna go there. X is gonna stop at one point. Especially in the past few years, there's been a struggle for somebody to maintain X. Nobody wants to maintain it anymore. So it is coming to switch, whether people are prepared for it or not. It will switch over soon.
Just like Pipewire.
So then my next question would be, do you think that the work, now that there's GNOME, Plasma, and having Xfce, like I would say the next, probably most common desktop environment across multiple distributions, would you say that's going to accelerate the adoption of Wayland enough to maybe knock off some of those rough edges?
Well, now that GNOME, KDE, or Plasma, and I guess Xfce, that's 3 of the biggest probably desktops. I'm not sure if Xfce is bigger in popularity than Mate, but
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, because MX uses it, and a bunch of others do as well. But the question is Wayland, is it much heavier than X in size? And it's lighter?
It's supposed to be lighter, but it's not as optimized, because everything has to move over still to support it.
Because that's kind of, with Peppermint, that's a big deal on how heavy their distro really is. It comes with almost nothing, and you build it as you install it.
I will say that the performance is better on Wayland. It's just some things just don't perform on Wayland.
I have a question for you, Nate. Did they give any timelines on when this is happening? Because like I've tested Sway, I've not used Sway. I don't think it's that stable. Like the display managers used to log in, it's very finicky, even on both x64 and ARM. So, and like me personally, I've changed the display managers several times. First, we used, I think, Lie for a while. You know, the minimal desktop manager called Lie.
Mm-hmm.
The terminal, that didn't work. And recently, just like 2 or 3 days before we released the Artemis edition, I've used SDDM for ARM for a while, because Lie doesn't work in ARM. So I knew SDDM worked, so I suggested to the main edition, let's use SDDM. So we tested SDDM worked well with Sway, so we switched. So it's finicky, it's still very finicky, but I think Xfce is like bastion of stability. So I'm not sure how this WL Roots project like what's the status of it. I think several Wayland-based window managers or / compositors like are using it. Like it's been developed by several people, not only Sway people, as far as I know. It's been a while since I did some research on that, but I'm not sure because Xfce wants everything to be stable. So I'm not sure when, how long, or when they will port everything to it, Wayland.
As far as NVIDIA GPUs, it says you'll have to use the Nouveau driver for testing since the proprietary NVIDIA driver does not provide Wayland support. So some things might work in some cases. So that's where it's at right now. Yep.
Yeah, because over the past 2 weeks, Debian pushed out their large package of updates, and in the update is what you start the update, and it says that an NVIDIA driver 460 is unstable, and then it asks you to quit. So you hit Q to quit, so it uninstalls the 460 driver and pulls down from Bookworm the 470 driver and installs it for you.
And as far as Mate is concerned, it says there is a thread, a link there. I didn't click on it, but on the Ubuntu discourse, porting Mate apps to Wayland as well. So it looks like there's a lot of work being done in that regard. I wonder how far behind Elementary is in their. I wonder what they can do to adopt Wayland, because I know right now they're all X. I didn't see any Wayland adoption. Seems like that's another big one that's going to need the Wayland treatment.
About Xfce, it's also important to note that unlike GNOME and Plasma, they don't have any people who are paid to work on Xfce. Everybody's part-time after work working on it, who works on it.
That's good to know.
It's kind of how Peppermint is.
Well, hopefully I can get some of that corporate sponsorship dollars, huh?
My question is the X in Xfce for Xorg?
Probably
so.
Because they do Wayland, would that need to be a
WFCE? Yeah.
I don't know.
I like it. I think you should propose that, Mark. Like go on the forum and propose.
Oh no, it's
change.
not for. It's Xforms common environment.
Right.
I don't know what Xforms is.
The question, I think it actually was because X was.
That was their toolkit before GTK, I think.
Okay.
How do they come up with the mouse?
Lightweight, I'm guessing.
They just picked an object to represent them, and it was a mouse.
Yeah,
it's tiny,
lightweight.
It's so tiny it squeaks when it moves.
Like how did Linux become Penguin?
Right.
And Xforms, it says in the history, Xforms is the graphical user interface toolkit for X based on the X11 library, Xlib library. So
Xfce predates GNOME, the GNOME project.
Yep.
Wow. I can only think of one desktop environment that's lighter than Xfce, and that'd be Qt.
Yeah, LXQt is lighter than Xfce for sure.
Yeah, I can't think of any
LXQt,
others.
So LXQt, I think, is just 350 MB out of the box when you're using with OpenBox. And OpenBox itself, when you have a separate OpenBox environment, fully functional, it also takes 350 MB, so it's the same thing. So you get a fully fledged desktop and under 400 MB. And Xfce takes around 500, so it's not too far.
That's
so on YouTube
stuff.
chat, Leviticus says the Xfce came from FVWM.
Good to know.
I see that Prophetic. He's wandered into the saloon here, and I don't know if he fell into a table or something, but he is now shouting. Not really shouting. He made a statement in the Zoom chat that he believes that Xfce is on borrowed time, and that's a pretty bold stance you're making there, Prophetic. I don't know if you
it's I guess it's in line with my handle being prophetic. I see the writing on the wall, and there's something there, but who knows? Like, I mean, nothing really dies when something's open source because someone's always going to use it. But in terms of getting the TLC that it used to get, that's not happening. If not, it's going to get less of it based on the person, I forgot his name, who was actually helping maintain it. It's even less maintained now. So it's it's only a matter of time before the person who's really giving the most TLC puts finds a new project to invest in,
So
and completely walks away from it.
Xfce still runs on 32-bit too. I don't know if that means anything.
It just means that people use it for older systems, and again, that goes by, like, I guess defining borrowed time is important here. Borrowed time in the sense of the leftovers. No one's really doing new development, new bug fixes, new security patches, or whatever it is on anything that's related to it. So it's just gonna meander. It's almost like a zombie. It's like not quite alive, but not quite dead.
Now I'm gonna have to kind of sort of disagree with you on that whole thing there, because
I think that's up in the air.
Years ago, I think it was like 2017-18 timeframe, I think. Xfce at that time was kind of sort of on its deathbed in a way. That's maybe a little bit too extreme to say, but there was no development on it until I think 4.17 came out, and I might be wrong on that number, but there was there was not a whole lot of development happening. It was like years since the previous update, and then when they went to GTK4, it seemed like there was a lot of work being done on it at the time. I don't know. I think it's cyclical, and every project out there technically is on borrowed time, and to some degree. I mean, because all it takes is a couple of key people to drop off, and a project can go dormant pretty darn quickly. There's not a whole lot of developers out there really doing a lot of the work.
Yeah, especially now that he's focused. The guy who was who did that last flurry of development, Sean Davis is his name, I think, right? I think in 2021, April 2021, he announced on Late Night Linux that he's going to be developing more for elementary OS. So he's not completely dropping Xfce, but he is kind of shifting away from it, and kind of in an episode. I just did a quick Google. It's episode 19 of Late Night Linux Extra, and he kind of explained some of the reasons why. And it just like, so that next, you're right, that whoever is going to do the next batch of development for Xfce, is it Sean or is it going to be somebody else? Who knows? But there's doing cyclical stuff versus constant maintenance. I think you feel the difference. You have the user base has a sense of certainty, and I think that's the key difference. When something's on borrowed time, you're not always certain about what's the next thing for that project and the timelines. Whereas GNOME, Plasma, it's always being developed. The cycles there, and the user bases have a certainty. So I think that's the key difference here. I mean, yeah, but you're right. Nothing's really dead. People are always going to use it somehow.
So the 4.16, the current one, came out in December of 2020. 4.14 before that came out. Oh, I don't know. I don't see a date.
The people that resist change will stay with it.
Yeah. MX Linux will always use it for the foreseeable future. Is on, especially the Debian channels, like they're always going to have those repositories of those versions. So it's not going anywhere. But I say borrowed time in the sense that it's if you don't know when the next major news from Xfce could be that no one's maintaining it, or it could be that there's a random person who's going to kind of take it over. But then even then, I hate to say, with Peppermint, like, you still don't know what the cadence is going to be. It's all based on volunteer uncertainty, and that's kind of rough for a user base,
Actually, the Peppermint team has done a really good job of actually making a lot of their stuff publicly available and easy for someone else to get into their group and work on it. They've learned their lesson with Mark Greaves, and how Mark he kept everything in his head and very seldom published anything, where these guys are publishing a lot of stuff in case someone wants to pick up on the team.
That's good to hear, because that's a big challenge. Is when you have volunteer community work being done is two things: certainty and then consistency.
So
now
4.14 was released in August of 2019. So just about a year late, a little over a year is when 4.16 came out. Then before that, it was 4 years and 5 months since 4.12 came out, which is February of 2015. And before that, 4.10 came out in 2012. So if you look at its history, it's not really ever had a very rapid progress. 4.8 came out in 2011, so I guess there's a little over a year between those. And then 4.6 came out in 2009. So it's not really have a track record of a lot of a very rapid development. It's been a kind of a slow moving project. So I don't know.
I'm experiencing with developers. They like to develop for a while. They make something really great. We iron out all the bugs and everything. Then we kind of like do a semi-hiatus and live life for a while before we get back to it again.
And then users who are facing bugs are kind of just also.
Well, they try to fix them in some cases.
They do bug fixes. They just don't do new releases necessarily.
It's about new features, like not bug fixes. I think
like the Peppermint team,
takes more effort.
They've taken on the Dev1 version too. Now there's a Dev1 version of Peppermint that's got a NIT in it instead of System D. And now they're toying with building a run it build.
Who would you say handles bug fixes faster and more consistently? Xfce or pick another distro?
I haven't come across an Xfce bug yet.
I know that's not true.
No, I haven't come. If it was a bug, I took it as it wasn't so great to just, trash it or not use it.
So something that I've noticed Xfce still has trouble with, and I'm not trying to bash on Xfce, but there is an issue with like in the past, maybe not having major updates for long periods of time was acceptable. It is becoming increasingly more difficult to maintain a pace of just slow development, especially when you consider the fact that hardware is changing much more rapidly now. We're getting much higher density displays in different configurations, different types of input and output hardware. We see things like VR. We see things like people running 3 different monitors. We've got super ultra wide monitors, and all of these things need to just work. And something Xfce still has trouble with is monitor power support, handling monitor sleep and resume. It has been way too long for them to still be having issues with basic device power, and they still do. So yeah, this is great news. I mean, yay for Wayland, but like, why is something like that still not even fixed?
Now, Schykle, that you brought it up, Xfce still has the ancient old problem with screen tearing. Even if you install Compton and try and set it up right, you still get some screen tearing.
Ironically, Wayland might fix that. It's it's a lot. Xfce is a great desktop, don't get me wrong. It's just they are in a position where they desperately need to move a lot faster than they've typically been comfortable with moving, because it's becoming like it will just get harder and harder to fix these things the longer they wait.
I wonder if maybe I'm just throwing it out there, but what if just maybe the average user that uses Xfce is not buying the brand new hardware anyway, and therefore the rate of development that needs to happen on Xfce can be delayed from things like GNOME and Plasma, which are more on the forefront, because it's not as necessary. I mean,
That's
It's
kind of
possible.
how MX is used along with Antics. And, Peppermint's kind of geared lightweight for old equipment. I mean, Debian works, that's where it shines its best, is on older equipment.
So it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you create a system which will poorly interact with with new hardware, then the only people who are going to be able to use it are the people with old hardware who don't have to deal with that. Because anybody who tries it with anything else is going to run into these issues, be like, oh, well, that doesn't work, and then just assume that it's old junk and never touch it again. And on the same note, I mean, some of this stuff isn't even all that new. Like, this is like just a normal monitor. You can plug it in, the session can go to sleep, and the monitor won't turn off. Why? Just it doesn't handle it properly a lot of the time.
Do you think it's possible that going to Wayland, we might see some convergence in some of the underpinnings of Wayland throughout the different desktop environments, and a lot of those things might actually get worked out as a result?
That would be great.
Possibly. Ideally, yes. That would be a good thing. That would be really nice.
But you don't think that's going to happen like that?
It's definitely it's not a whole silver bullet. Like, Wayland will solve a lot of things. Wayland can't quite solve that
Drag and drop.
particular issue necessarily.
Who's behind the Wayland project?
I mean, it's
more.
It's a kind of a corporate.
Does it come from Red Hat or Fedora, or is it just a group effort?
It's a group thing, but I think Red Hat is a massive play with it.
And you got to figure they're not doing a server like Xorg or like a program like that. They're doing the protocol. Everybody else has to implement it, so it's not exactly comparable that way.
Yeah, to Schykle's point that waiting too long for development cycles. I know Endless OS back in the day, they waited too long to update some libraries, and they said that they will never let it go that long ever again, because the pain it took to upgrade some underlying libraries for their version of the desktop environment was just so brutal and painful, and they have like full-time people working on it. So imagine if you let development go too long, and then the mountain of technical debt that you incur, it becomes harder and harder to fix or build upon. And you see this with some projects like even Thunderbird, where there's like bugs that are like decades old, but because it's so old, no one wants to touch it. And once you get to that point, good luck, because now no one wants to fix it. No one's gonna, and no one knows how to follow up and do the research to get your hands around technical aspects of fixing things. Become incredibly harder as time goes on. So that's a danger of it. But MX Linux makes it work with Xfce, so it's never going away completely. But
I think it's those old lingering bugs that concern me probably the most. Because if nobody wants to tackle it, whatever the problem is, and they just kind of maybe patch it with another patch and then patch it again, make it work. That's concerning. And I guess there's a history of lots of bugs that linger in open source, but they also linger in proprietary software too. So that's nothing that open source software has a monopoly on. So speaking of other lightweight desktop environments, it'd be nice if Dan was here, because then he could speak a little more to this than I can. But Lubuntu has a new Backports PPA. So they launched the Backports PPA to provide Lubuntu users with the latest and greatest LXQt desktop environment releases. The Lubuntu Backports PA repository was created due to the request of many Lubuntu users to make it easier to enjoy the most recent LXQt desktop environment on top of the latest stable Lubuntu release. So Lubuntu developer Simon Quigley, who actually I met him at Self. He was at Self. It was pretty cool. As time goes by, our development focus will continue to be on new releases as we plan on landing and testing changes there prior to pushing them to the backports, said Simon Quigley. That being said, this is the perfect middle ground between stability and new features that users of all experience levels will be able to enjoy. Ubuntu users who add the Backports PPA repository to their system will be able to enjoy newer features from regular non-LTS Lubuntu releases, earlier than everyone else who stays on the LTS release without the backports. This means if a user adds the backports PPA to Lubuntu 22.04 LTS installation, they'll get the access to LXQt 1.1.0 desktop environment and all of its components rather than LXQt 0.17.0 that was released with Lubuntu 22.04. So this is very cool news from Lubuntu, but it is important to note that this is a beta version of the PPA, so it's mostly for those wanting to test out. When the stable PPA is released, you will need to replace the beta version with a stable version. It's also important to note that the backports PPA only works with Lubuntu 22.04 LTS at the moment. So I think that's pretty exciting about Lubuntu.
So the reason it works only for 22.04 is that Dan said they're building only against that base. So they're taking the latest execute from upstream and then building against the 22.04 base. So that's why it'll work only for that.
I would imagine that it's probably hard to backport to something even older just because of the
libraries. Yep.
Yeah, libraries get stale on those LTSs. So I thought that was interesting. It's neat. It's nice to see that the kind of a middle ground exists there.
So this is similar to how Kubuntu does it. How Kubuntu has their own PPA to give you the latest Plasma in case it didn't ship with the current release of Kubuntu. And then for the LTS, they give you the .x whatever release for the life cycle of the LTS until they give you 3 years support. So 3 years afterwards, I think they stop giving you that backport.
Yeah, so I think it's great that we see a lot of progress happening on LXQt. Now, Prophetic, do you think LXQt is on borrowed time?
No, I was kidding. Imagine just being a negative Nancy about everything. No, this is exciting stuff, and
they stole time from LXDE, so they're not on borrowed time.
Oh, okay. So I kind of wonder, and this is just a point of discussion, but why would somebody run LXQt over Plasma when the gap between is actually pretty tight at this point as far as memory usage? It's within.
I wondered that a lot.
Plasma is 700 and LXQt is 350. There's a lot of difference.
Okay.
So for me, even though there's like a decent bit of settings in LXQt, I think as a whole, the way that everything is presented, it just feels a lot simpler. Like widgets are cool. I don't use them. I don't know. There's just a lot of things that exist in KDE that are useful to a certain set of people that are in no way at all useful to me. And it's not really that I have to use them, but the fact that they're there is distracting for me. And so usually when I want a super minimal, nothing's involved kind of desktop, LXQt is probably my go-to. I don't do Xfce, I don't do Mate or anything. I just skip straight to LXQt.
As close as you can get without getting into a window manager.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
There's a certain app that I wanted a version of, and so I ended up running a virtual machine of LXQt Lubuntu, and ended up doing in VirtualBox seamless mode.
Okay.
And then I just gave it just 1 gig, and if I needed to pull that app up, I think it was a version of K-Organizer, and because I was on MX Linux, and I just kind of emulated the app when I needed to call upon it through that and on seamless mode, and it worked smoothly. It was really a dream. It's just the power of how something being so light. It's pretty cool.
So I have a 2 gigabyte crap book that I use from time to time, and I had LXQt on it for quite a while, and then I found that the Plasma version didn't really take up that much more memory, and so I ended up just using that instead. And the performance is on par, with the exception of SDDM was kind of slow, and so I basically I swapped it out for LightDM, and that's kind of what I've been using to start it.
And one difference you see easily is on the Raspberry Pi, at least for people who are booting off SD cards, not SSDs. So people who are booting off SSDs, Plasma works really good for them. But for people who just use micro SD cards, Plasma is the worst experience of any I tried. Like it's not smooth. You drag with windows around, they don't move at all. So that's why I initially started using LXQt because of that. I wanted a Qt base which is similar to Plasma, but it could run on my Pi. So that's why I started using LXQt.
So an interesting point about that, and why in some cases you'll see people say KDE feels slow or buggy or whatever, even though it's not that heavy anymore. KDE does a lot of things that reduce the amount of things it keeps loaded initially. So it's pretty lean right out of the gate, and it stays pretty lean for most of the time. However, this comes at the cost of loading a lot of resources immediately as you need them. So if you're storing it on a slower device, particularly something like a micro SD card, which has poor access times, you're going to feel it a lot more because those things aren't pre-cached the way they are in other desktops. KDE is lean, but it does come at a cost, and you see that cost a lot more with different types of storage. Another thing as well, I forgot, actually, never mind. Yeah.
Actually, I have proof for what Schykle is saying. So I told you guys I have two different SBCs. One is a Pi, other is an Odroid. Odroid is a bit more powerful. So even though I'm using a micro SD card and Odroid too, I can use KDE normally because the CPU is really good. So whatever processing it needs to do, maybe the Pi can't do it fast enough, but the Odroid can, because it has a big little architecture. So whatever KDE needs to do fast, it can just put that on a big core, so that just executes fast. So it's the same KDE, it's two different SBCs, but on the Pi, it's like horrible.
What would you guys do? Like, what would you have to see in Lubuntu or LXQT in order for you to consider it as a potential daily driver for you guys?
Ooh, I mean, gestures, animations.
Bluetooth. Yeah, I just switched to LXQt today because I was testing, again, I told Nathan at the beginning of the show, right, I was testing out themes for another friend of mine. It's like, I was trying to test Bluetooth audio. There is no Bluetooth manager, and you have to use Blue Devil, and it doesn't integrate with the panel. So there you go.
So I found, I think I like LXQt just fine, but I found that the lack of customization, so I know kind of the opposite of Schykle, I guess, in this, but the lack of all the different little knobs and switches for me to turn and kind of adjust things the way I like was actually part of the reason I just ended up using Plasma. It was just easier for me to get what I wanted with less effort on my part.
Like you can tweak it a lot. There are a lot of different settings. So everything is in LXQt configuration center. You can theme pretty much the way you want. Just get like Qt5 City and Quantum, and then you can get whatever KDE theme you want, like whatever Qt theme you want, and because it's window manager. So for OpenBox, there's a whole bunch of things. Like for OpenBox, I don't think you'll get as many themes for any other thing. It's like, you can get a lot of things. And also one more thing, and Nate, you are an expert at this. You can switch OpenBox and put Kevin. So then you have all the KDE knobs.
Yeah, I've done that as well. And then it's a little more to my liking because I can use a lot of the customization. But then at that point, I'm like, well, I'm just going to use full Plasma at that point. So
yeah, that's fine. Like that's what I do. If I can use Plasma, I'll use Plasma. But if I can't, the next best thing.
I use Plasma on my Pi 4, and sure, yeah, it's pretty much, it's very stripped down. Like I don't have any extra fluff in there, so it's just basically it runs pretty lean, and it's an 8GB Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, it's super impressive how light it can run.
Yeah, so.
Again, it's lightweight on the memory, but again, it's not smooth at all compared to others. And I tried to strip everything. I removed Baloo. I removed several services. Like nothing helped for me.
Interesting.
I just like the jammy jellyfish background in Lubuntu.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
I love that one.
That's incredible.
I like the way Plasma actually handles USB devices. It seems to do it almost seamlessly and so crisp. You install Blue Man and Xfce, you got to fight with it 3 or 4 clicks in before you get it to work.
There is nothing like their USB handling and like device handling system that I've ever experienced, and that's something I wish I had everywhere. Just the fact that you are able to have a little drop down which gives you the option to open it in files or open it here and open it there, and that stays there. It doesn't just like pop up once and then if you select the wrong thing you're toast. Like, it's so good to have. There's a lot of things.
Let me ask you a question. With KDE, are you able, if you have something like a game open on one monitor, are you able to somehow like right click on the panel and get the game to shift to another monitor?
Yes.
You can.
I use the meta key and I click on it and I just drag it wherever I want. You can have it pop full, even if it's full screen. Yeah, it'll full screen pop to the next screen.
Because that's what I like about Cinnamon that I'm currently using is you can right click on your game and it's on the wrong monitor and it says move to other monitor. You click on that and boop, it goes over to my bigger monitor.
That's a pretty cool way of doing it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it is.
But in most desktops, you should be able to press the super key and move a window. Also, in a lot of desktops like Pantheon and GNOME, if you press the super key and right click, you can actually resize the window without having to find the exact corner of it, which is pretty cool. Right click and drag.
Well, the super key opens the menu, don't it?
Well, you got to hold it while you do it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, these little tricks.
Weird.
That's why I got Titan Linux on one of my laptops, because it's the perfect distro to learn how to use KDE. I mean, it's all opened up and everything, and you can tinker with stuff. And if someone says something like this, like you just told me, I can run over there and try it out and get used to it.
That's good.
How cool would it be, though, if they ended up allowing for this like master configuration file where you can just load your KDE settings configurations universally?
That would be nice.
And then it just, because that's the only downside is if I have to, that feels like a chore sometimes when I have to set up a new Plasma environment all over again the way I like to tweak it. There's so many different areas I gotta like go through one by one. I have a spreadsheet to help me get through that, but
that is usually one of the big advantages of window managers. You can have the one config file you just drop in. You got all your settings there for the most part, not everything, but of course. But
Nate, did you just like a tweet of mine from 2 years ago?
I did. With the mug.
Oh yeah, I like that one actually. I still have that mug. I should bring it out.
That was before the notification bell I put on you. But yeah, it was, funny. Mark put that up there. I'm like, oh, that's funny.
I searched for Lubuntu fanboy and it came up with Schykle, and
I believe it.
It's great. It's great.
That's gonna go.
Oh my goodness.
So when I publish this on the Linux Saloon page, that's gonna be a link I put in the description, just because.
I love it.
It's just such a funny picture. Do you still have that mug?
I do. Oh, I'll go grab it actually. I need a cup of coffee anyway.
Oh, good.
Mug broke.
Also,
by the way, massive... I see you're wearing some nice gear tonight too.
I am.
Papa West, look at that.
Oh yeah. Fun story about this. I actually went to In-N-Out the other day, and a young man actually approached me, which terrified me. And then it turns out he was looking at my shirt, and he was like, "Hey, I like your shirt." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." He goes, "Yeah, I use Pop! OS. That was actually like my first distro, and it's my favorite. It's all I use." And I was like, "Is this real? Is this a real person out in the wild telling me that they know what I'm talking about?" It was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it's fun when that happens. Like when it's somebody you don't know, and then all of a sudden they're a technology enthusiast. And,
instant bond.
Yep.
Oh, also, massive shout out. I get a little salty with KDE. sometimes, just because I'm very opinionated. But seriously, they are doing amazing work, and the fact that they are able to create a desktop which has so many incredible options in terms of flexibility and extensibility with third-party stuff, Latte Dock, like nothing else works the way KDE does, and like that is a serious feat of technical prowess. So they do deserve a lot of praise.
Yeah, they don't slow down.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's
They're
one of the
the
reasons
only
I
one
like
I
using
know
it.
that have a mobile app, right?
I think
That the
KDE Connect.
I think so.
KDE Connect, yeah.
Yeah.
KDE Connect.
That
It's
Plasma
the only
Mobile,
one I've learned of.
Plasma Mobile is actually doing pretty good too.
Oh, really? Okay.
It'd be great if they worked with an iPhone.
One day
One
we
day.
got this.
Yeah.
I think the iPhone one was released. It's available for iOS now. KDE Connect.
Oh, it is. You're right.
It'll allow you to swap music back and forth too.
Not sure. I don't have any iDevices, but
I know you can generally do pictures, but that's the limit.
I would like to get what is it called? An iPad. It's like a moron. I'd like to get one of them their iPads.
Yeah,
for
you're on the right track.
yeah.
iBox.
It's this this anyway, just to see how well it would work, because I think it might be, if I can then also use it like as a secondary screen and everything else, that might be a good way to go with it.
And by the
I
way,
don't know if you're going to be able to use it as a secondary screen. Apple likes to lock down their hardware pretty hard.
Of course they do, and that might have me just sell it again. Whatever.
Financial loss. Goodbye.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna buy it used. I won't buy a new one. I'll get a used one. It's not really a priority. It's just one of those, like, it's a like to have. It's.
I had one and I gave it to my ex-mother-in-law because she liked to use it as a slot machine. Literally.
Annie Kratz in the chat says Pine tablet. I don't know if anyone here has a Pine tablet and how that's working. I wonder if Annie has a Pine tablet. Maybe she does. I don't know. But I wonder how well those things work.
and by the way, it's my understanding that KDE Connect will actually work with a couple of other flavors. I don't know exactly the details on that. I don't know if someone here can discuss it.
You can run KDE Connect on anything. In fact, I ran it on MX Linux for quite a while, just in terminal. I just installed KDE Connect, and it runs fine. I like the terminal, so it was really easy to use, and I wrote an article on it. But it works.
There's a GTK version called GS Connect, and I know Zorin OS has a similar fork for their platform for Zorin that mimics the same thing.
I'm assuming these are for Android phones.
Yeah. What is?
The Connect anything. Knowing Apple and their hardware.
Do we have any Linux Mint users here? Mark? Yep, I see that right there. So Mark, did you know that Linux Mint 21 beta was released?
No, not until I saw the show notes ahead of time. Tell me more. Tell me more.
I will tell you more. So Linux Mint has a new beta out for testing for those who would like to help test the latest version of Mint. Of course, this is a beta version, so if you're not looking to beta test, I would suggest not installing it. Linux Mint has a lot of benefits to using it, but the biggest downside was the upgrade process and how problematic it was. Previously, it was expected that every 2 years the upgrade process would be a problem for users, as a new LTS rebase for Ubuntu would result in compatibility issues. But I'm happy to inform you that Linux Mint has now addressed this issue as of Linux Mint 21 with a new GUI upgrade tool that should make it much easier for existing Mint 20.3 users to upgrade to 21. So I think that is a wonderful thing to see. I know it's been a long time complaint of Linux Mint because of how they diverged from Ubuntu. Linux Mint 21 also sees the inclusion of the Cinnamon 5.4 desktop as well as the many updated packages from the rebase of Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. Linux Mint has also made some other changes to this release by replacing Blueberry with Blue Man for Bluetooth handling. They've added a new XApp thumbnails component for handling WebP, app image, EPUB, MP3, and RAW file systems. I'm not sure what that is.
I'm sorry.
Tumor
What was
file-
it? Thumbnails?
Thumbnail. Maybe it's thumbnails.
Mm.
Maybe it's a typo. Thumbnails. Component for handling. A process monitor was added to report automated updates and system snapshots for the background and many more. The biggest change to the Cinnamon 5.4 desktop is certainly the rebasing of its window manager to Muffin to use a more updated version of Mutter with Mutter 3.36. And in case you don't know, Mutter is the upstream window manager and compositor for GNOME. And it's a much needed change for Cinnamon, as the previous version of Muffin was based on Mutter 3.2, which was released in 2011. It's very good to see that the window manager for Linux Mint Cinnamon desktop is getting some much needed updates. Although this version is currently 2 years out of date already in regards to the latest Mutter release, and will need to see these compatibility improvements for future versions of Cinnamon to support the Wayland display server. And I have some links if you'd like to see more on that. So does that interest you at all? Are you at all excited about some of the improvements? I wonder if they've got the issues with the single process thread worked out on Cinnamon. I didn't see anything about that. Maybe maybe Mutter was the issue. I can't say for sure. Either way,
It's exciting. It's exciting that they're finally going to have a GUI upgrade path now by default. Because before you had to go and do like a CLI, different things, and there was like a whole procedure that had to be developed. Otherwise, you would have to nuke and pave, and now you're going to have an option doing everything with the GUI.
that is good news. I know Fedora had that, at least at one point in time. I don't know if that still works well in Fedora, the graphical upgrade tool. I wonder how long we'll see the Cinnamon 5.4 in other distributions. Maybe Sravan knows, because he's kind of he's an EndeavourOS guy. Have you used
What's
Cinnamon?
the question again?
The
I
Cinnamon.
tested it, but not extensively. I just
Okay.
I test all because we offer 14 editions. I test all of them, but I spend most of my time in the Ds I like. But I think Cinnamon is the one which looks closest to Windows for sure. Looks and feels closest to Windows, 100%.
I think it's supposed to feel familiar, like very familiar. So I think they do a good
That's
job
their
of that.
goal. I think that's their goal, right?
I think
If I'm
so.
not mistaken.
I'm still on Cinnamon 4.8.
Is that on Debian?
Yeah, that's what comes with Debian. But you know what? It works. It does all the things I want it to do. I don't need much more. It's not broken.
I kind of like the new shiny with rolling with Plasma. I like to have all the new stuff. It makes me, it makes it fun when you get an update. So there's an interesting thing that TUXEDO Computers is doing. This thing called the TUXEDO Aquarius. It's water cooling for Linux laptops. I don't know how it interfaces, but I'm interested in knowing like how adding external cooling, water cooling to a laptop, how that would work out. So anyway, TUXEDO has released an in-house Linux driver and graphical control for the TUXEDO Control Center for their Aquarius laptop water cooling solution. It lets you control the fan speed with 3 predefined speeds: slow at 50%, medium at 65%, and fast 80%, as well as the LED strip, light strip control. So they're going to be talking about this tomorrow on Destination Linux, episode 287. They're going to have diving deeper into it about water cooling for a laptop. Is that a first? Has there been water cooling a laptop before?
I've seen lots of desktop videos, but not a laptop.
I saw one where Linus put a MacBook Pro in a Ziploc bag and put it underwater.
Well, I've never seen that.
It's old. I don't remember exactly what he did with it as far as, I don't know, maybe it wasn't a laptop. I think it was an iPad, so he could run the CPU bench test on it, so you could tap through the bag, and it was in water to see if you could get better. I don't know. I think don't the heat pipes have vapor chambers in them in some of these laptops? I think that's the closest thing to legit water cooling there is.
I'm not sure.
Most laptops I've taken apart actually got a heat pipe that bolts onto the CPU in some fashion, and the heat pipe goes over to a remote cooler.
True.
Yeah, so I think this is pretty interesting. So the laptop itself actually has a loop inside of it that connects to an external loop. So it still has air cooling internally, but then you can add an extra loop for cooling, or it has an extra loop for cooling with this water cooler.
So it probably has quick disconnects. Oh yeah, they're right there. Some of those are pretty neat. I think Jay's 2 Cents did reviews on those a long time ago. Where you could get quick disconnects for your actually a desktop, and it's interesting to see how much or how little fluid comes out, because valves and things and stuff and electronics, generally you need if you're going to disconnect anything on these kinds of loops and these systems, you really want your quick disconnects to be dead on. You don't want any kind of liquid flowing anywhere it's not supposed to.
Yeah, usually even with the hydraulic quick disconnects, they dribble all over the place as you're pulling them apart or snapping them together.
I wonder how they keep the air from like air bubbles from getting in there. Like if you have to bleed the system off periodically, or maybe there's a reservoir that it takes care of that internally.
Maybe the pump just pumps them around to the reservoir.
Yeah, like a radiator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's neat to see these other ideas for cooling, because I know that these performance laptops sometimes they're cooling challenged, and I know that with my laptop, after a while of like really pushing it, it starts to thermal throttle down, and so that would be a way to avoid that for sure.
Heat creep is a thing.
Yeah,
heat creep is when you have your cooling is working, but other components that aren't getting direct cooling begin to warm up from the ambience, and then your direct cooling starts to wane in its effectiveness because everything else is getting hot around it. So laptops are especially vulnerable to that. I'll tell you what, though, the ones that do better are ones that have aluminum chassis, because aluminum is a great conductor.
I wonder, though, do you think aluminum chassis would be, because it does transfer, the thermal transfer is a lot better with an aluminum chassis, but do you think there's issues of like having like thermal saturation though with aluminum, and then you can't actually cool it because you actually have all that specific heat that's now stored in the chassis itself?
I mean, maybe, but you're looking at adding all of that surface area, like these. If I take the back off of my Razer, which I'm using now, it's got little heat sink pads that connect certain chipsets directly to it, and you're getting that ambient surface. And it's not like, see, heat creep is bad where you have heat trapped inside and it can't permeate through. Like if you have a thick case with padding and stuff. So I have a fractal case that sits on the floor next to me, and there is absolutely nothing that the chassis is doing for cooling. It's all the fans. But on these laptops, or we even have, we have fanless mini PCs, and that's how they work. The chassis are all aluminum. It is the heat sink, and so it's radiating that out into the air. So now you're at the mercy of your ambient temperature. So if you have good AC in the house, you're going to be fine. So the issue then is better. It's actually better with the aluminum chassis because it's dissipating it. Your plastic chassis are the ones that are more insulative. They are going to hold that heat. I probably could have said that first and not gone through all the hoops, but I think out loud.
That's
Apologies.
all good. I was just thinking on that. Like, I mean, I don't know. I just know that when I have a metal laptop, like let's say it's summertime and I'm wearing shorts or whatever, and I have a laptop on my lap, it's less comfortable than a plastic laptop.
That's because the metal is dissipating the heat from inside out to your legs
directly to my my epidermis. Yeah,
it's good for laptop, not so good for your legs.
Exactly. Well, very cool. So on the menu for next week, you know what? Eris, are you back? Because we forgot to do something. I made a boo-boo, but it'll be a good segue into the next bit.
What bit? Was that good enough segue?
Well, the next piece.
What piece do you speak of?
Well, so one of the great things about Eris is he takes the time to do polls in the Telegram and the Matrix, and I missed the one in the Matrix, which is unfortunate because it's obvious. And the question was, what base do you use the most? I'm trying to say this slowly in hopes that Eris just pops back. So did some of you participate in those polls? Yeah, good.
I think it was a popular poll.
Yeah, it seemed like it was a popular poll.
Well, I don't know about the Matrix one, but 21% said Arch Manjaro, 5% said Debian, 18% said Fedora, 0% said Gentoo. Obviously.
That's weird.
3% said Nix OS, 8% said openSUSE, 34% said Ubuntu, which is not too surprising. 8% said Windows and Mac, and those people were banned. Just kidding. 3% said other. Please state other and provide details. And I don't have the 3% in front of me right now, but that's the basic breakdown. So the top two was Ubuntu and Arch Manjaro.
So in Matrix, I want to pretend like I voted in this one, and so I'm going to change the numbers. Sorry, Eris. But there was 25% said Arch/Manjaro, 25% said Debian, 25% said Nix OS, and then 25% for openSUSE. Otherwise, it'd been 33% for each, but I'd like to add the 25% for openSUSE. So not as many people voted on the Matrix, but I totally missed that poll. So I basically modified the poll just now. No.
And no option for Temple OS. I'm sorry, Annie. She says Temple OS were in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, it's no option for Temple OS. Is that built from no other operating system? I don't know, like no other distribution?
Temple OS was made by one person, and it's not based on anything. And they came up with their own graphic stack and their own language, Holy C.
And he's gutted. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, next time we'll be sure to add something about Temple OS just for Annie. That I want to segue then into our distribution challenge, distribution exploration. I'm still saying the old thing for next week. I'm very excited about this one, and that is we're gonna do openSUSE Leap 15.4.
Yay!
So for those who have not installed it yet, number one, I don't know what's the matter with you. I'm kidding. I don't mean that. That was a joke. So I'm not trying to be toxic to
everything.
That one guy that thinks I'm toxic. So Leap 15.4 has come out, and it came out about a month ago or so. And so we're going to test it out for next week. I will be doing several bits of testing, one of which is going to be on my my kitchen system. I will talk about how that upgrade went from 15.3. And then also, if you have any distribution suggestions for distribution, feel free to email me at cubiclenate.com or suggestions at linuxsaloon.com. I can send it there. I will get that as well. You can put those suggestions as well in the Telegram chat or Matrix. Make sure you tag it with distro exploration. Make sure to put those things on a list. We'd like to try and do at least one of these a month, a distro exploration. They are more work than the other weeks, so I just want to make sure that there is more suggestions pouring in, and also suggestions for applications, as well as for us to try out, or even genres of applications, maybe like a series of applications. I'd like to get a little more participation from the community on that, since apparently not a whole lot of people cared about the time management one, and I thought there would be more. But hey, c'est la vie. I guess I know it's not popular. Although it was helpful for me. So there's that.
Also, another news. Next week, those who come here without trying openSUSE are banned from Linux Saloon.
No, I would never do that. I'll browbeat you, but that'll be it.
Huh?
At most, just a browbeating.
I was joking. Again, it was not serious.
All right, now it's time for last call.
Can we ask about? So, are there different flavors of Leap that I need to worry about, or just download the basic and I'll be good to go?
So you have two basic download options. You have the full ISO, and you also have a net install. The net install is much smaller. It's like I don't know, around 100 megabytes or so, and then from there you install whatever desktop environment you want to install. There's lots of different ways to install different desktop environments. If you don't like any of the options that are there, you can actually go and find the pattern and install whatever it is you want right from the installer. It's a little bit of a hop and a skip to get to that, but it is a thing. If you have any questions on how to do that, I'll be more than happy to guide anybody along. But you go to git.opensuse.org to download Leap 15.4, or you can go to opensuse.org and you can get the link from there as well. For OpenSUSE Leap 15.4, the big exciting thing about OpenSUSE Leap is it's the LTS, I guess, of the OpenSUSE flavors. I use the rolling myself. It's a very boring distribution, and I really appreciate it because it just kind of just works and keeps working. I don't have to think about it. It doesn't require any special massaging to keep going. But the problem with the static releases is you do sometimes get a little bit of aging, a little bit of staleness in the libraries, which can be a problem. So very excited.
I hope you can explain next week, Nate, how openSUSE is the upstream and downstream of SUSE Linux.
So actually they run in parallel. So they're binary compatible with each other. There's really only just some community stuff on top of openSUSE that differentiates it from SLE, and there's some branding stuff that's different for SLE than openSUSE. But it's pretty close. It's a really neat business model they have going on. So if let's say you start off with let's say you're in the IT space and you start off, we can talk about this next week, a business or whatever on openSUSE Leap, and they require more support because of their needs are growing, you can then actually roll them into SLE, and it's no pain. Everything will work the same, and then they can have support then from SUSE itself. So it's pretty cool how they have it set up. And I will chat away. Go ahead.
We're testing the Leap version, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Leap 15.4.
Because it's right next to Tumbleweed.
Right. Which is what I typically run, but Leap on some things. All right. So
Nate, again, I think we discussed it a few weeks ago also, because I think Leap is going away.
Not really. It's
not really, but sort of. It's changing into something else.
It's change. Like, how they're doing it is going to change. So there are issues with maintaining software packages. Like, there's a lot of technical liability in static releases, and Ubuntu's feeling that pain, and SUSE is feeling that pain as well. So what they're trying to do is create a more reliable base, and it's a kind of a combining of some of the aspects of micro OS. I'll have a better talk about it, but micro OS and some of the immutable desktop characteristics into Leap, and so it's called ALP instead. So it is changing a little bit. There's some fear that they're going to stop focusing on the desktop in this. I don't see that happening necessarily, because they do have a lot of desktop workstations that they support as well. But they do have to put they basically have to make things need to be more sustainable, and so this is a move to make the static release more sustainable.
The chameleon is evolving.
It is. It's going from to go from a Charmeleon to a Charizard or something like that. I don't really know.
Nah, it's changing from green to purple. Or something.
Yeah, maybe it'll be like a darker green or lighter green. All right, so Mark, tomorrow, the Atlanta Linux Enthusiasts Group.
That's right. We meet every Sunday at U.S. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. to 6. And you can find more out about that at ale.org. It is a time for people that are having problems to join in, ask questions. Again, you got to manage your own questions. Make sure you get the answers you're looking for. We typically have about 7, 8 to 10 people join, and we'll talk about open source stuff, and sometimes we get on other topics, but again, anyone is welcome. Since we're online, anyone's welcome to join us and pose your Linux question, and hopefully you'll get an answer. We're more users and enthusiasts than developers, so keep that in mind.
That's cool. Users typically have good, especially the long running neckbeard graying neckbeards tend to have a lot of good answers. So
some are sysadmins, some are retired folks that just or just enthusiasts, hobbyists.
So Mark, like what distribution do you get the most questions about? Like everyone uses Ubuntu, or
I will tell you the top flavors, the top distributions are what we get questions about. Fedora, Ubuntu, Arch. We'll talk about that probably the most. And a lot of, sometimes we, in Atlanta, we used to invite students to our in-person meetings. So a lot of times we would get, students that want to learn Red Hat right off the bat. It's like, okay, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you're going to need a job probably. I mean, you can, and that's what they were after, right? They were after trying to get into the job market and wanted that sysadmin stuff. So, but some are more interested in server-side Linux rather than desktop, and that's just fine.
Yeah, it's cool. That's great that you do that. All right, so Steve's not here, but he has the coffee clatch every Sunday morning, or most Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. Central or 9 a.m. Eastern. Destination Linux is streaming live tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. So check that out. We'll be talking about the TUXEDO cooling, external cooler for laptops. Linux user space. I don't know if I haven't checked up on. I've been out of the loop this week, but I think there should be another episode coming out this Monday. Is that correct, Aris?
They already posted their first episode, and this will be the distro episode, and they'll be focusing on Ubuntu, and it'll be out on Monday, I think.
Excellent. I'm in a podcast called Linux Out Loud, and there we discuss that I've in some ways switched to Arch. Sort of. Not really. But that comes up Wednesday. So if you want to check that out, those are released every Wednesday. For more things on me, you can go to cubelinate.com. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank everyone for being a part of the conversation, both the Zoom meeting and on the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching this show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computers. Thank you for stopping by, and be sure to tip your developers. And please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Take it. Bye.
And Prophetic's last word is Puppy Linux.
Well, is my mic good?
Yes, your mic is fantastic.
Beautiful. So,
somebody's got a fire.
That sounded exciting.
Something exploded over there.
So I hope whoever had the beeping going on, I hope that everything's okay.
It's fine. I fixed it.
All right. Was that your carbon monoxide? Were you talking too much into the mic?
Pretty much, yeah. It was carbon dioxide. I'm full of hot air.
All right. Well, hopefully nothing further happens. That's unfortunate. Could you turn up your mic a little bit? You're kind of quiet.
True. Is that better? Way
better. Now I can hear you without struggling. My old man ears are having a hard time, and I really want Aris to come back.